All right, geometry, this is it. We are at the final week of remote learning. For the first section, we're going to be focusing on finding the volume of prisms and cylinders. This entire week is going to be focused on finding the volume. By far, the most important thing that you need to know is that if you are not using the right formula on each shape, it's going to be very difficult for you to get the right answer. So, over to the right, I have written down the 3 formulas you will need for this specific skill. So if you are finding the volume of either prisms or cylinders, then you're going to need one of the 3 formulas I have on the board. If it's a rectangular prism, volume will be found by taking the length times the width times the height. If it is a triangular prism, you're going to have to do 1/2 the length times the width times the height. And unfortunately, the messy one that's almost always going to give us a very ugly decimal for our answer is the cylinder. We're going to have to take pi times the radius squared times the height. For all of these questions, a calculator is imperative. Many of the numbers get relatively large pretty quickly. And in the case of cylinders, you're going to need a calculator to multiply by pi. So please take your time, especially on cylinders, because if you round incorrectly, the website is unfortunately going to mark your answer wrong. So let's look at a few examples. This first diagram is of a rectangular prism. Keep in mind that a square is a specific type of rectangle. So the base of this is in fact a square, but it still falls into the first category. So we're going to take the length times the width times the height. 9 times 9 times 10. After I do that, I end up getting an answer of 810. So I'll type that in so you guys can see that our score improves. Now I hope that it's fairly obvious to you that in the next question we have a triangular prism. The only difference is that the base of this shape is not rectangular and instead is triangular. Now I know some of you might be saying, well, isn't the base on the bottom a rectangle? Remember that when talking about prisms or cylinders, the base does not have to be the thing on the bottom of the shape, because a shape can be turned so that its bases are on the front and the back, or on the left and the right. In this case, our prism is basically going from front to back. So I'm going to be using this equation, 1/2 length times width times height. So I'm going to take the 5 times the 4 times the 10, but I'm also going to multiply by 1/2. You can take 1/2 at the beginning, or you can just divide by 2 at the end, whatever your preference is. Regardless, when I multiply these numbers together, I'm going to get 100 as my answer. So I'm going to type in 100, and we'll verify our score improves. So we are currently at 10. And you can see our score has gone up. Now, the last example, we're finding the volume of a cylinder. This is where, again, the numbers will get very messy. So please take your time. So for this cylinder, I'm going to use pi, but they tell me to use 3.14. So you don't need to use the pi button on your calculator. I will be just typing in 3.14. Then I have to get the radius. Notice that this dotted line goes all the way across the circle. If you watched one of the previous skill videos, you should know that that's the diameter. We need 1/2 of that for the radius. So the radius is 8. So I start off with 3.14. I will multiply by 8 squared. And then the height of this cylinder is 10. Now some of you might square the 8 first to get 64, and some of you might try to type this in all at the same time on your calculator. You're going to want to be careful, because if you square the wrong thing, if you press enter too early, you could end up with the wrong answer. So I really hope you're following along at home so that you can verify that you get the correct answer. I'm going to tell you what it is after I type it in correctly. So, according to my calculator, we are getting an answer of 2009.6. And that is not me rounding. That was literally the entire answer on my calculator. Now, up here in the directions, they want me to round to the nearest hundredth, which would typically be 2 decimal places. Since there is no second decimal in my answer, it's going to be okay for me to not put a second decimal. You don't have to put 0 if the number is 0. But if there had been another number, I would need to put 2 decimal places. So please keep that in mind. So we are currently sitting at a score of 19. I'm going to type in the answer of 2009.6 just so we can verify that our answer has in fact improved. And once we do that, we'll be done for the section. And there you guys go. You can see our score has improved. So that should take care of all of the different types of questions you could see related to rectangular, triangular, prisms, or cylinders. Now, once your score gets higher, you could see much more complicated problems. Remember, guys, if you want to try those, that's fine, but you have absolutely no obligation to go that far. Once you hit a score of about 70, feel free to stop and move on to the next skill. So hopefully this video was helpful. Please take your time, especially on the cylinders. Get those numbers typed in correctly. I will see you guys in the next video.